Syempre, hindi rin mawawala yung mga indeterminate, indeterminate forms natin na 0 over 0 or infinity over infinity. Let's evaluate the limit of 4 minus 4 sine x over 3 cosine squared x as x approaches pi over 2. So by direct substitution, this is 4 minus 4 sine pi over 2 over 3 cosine squared pi over 2. That is equal to 4 minus 4 times 1, 3 times 0 squared. So we have 0 over 0. So indeterminate form. So anong gagawin natin? Gagawa tayo ng way na ito ay magkakaroon ng limit. So observe that eto, cos squared x, alam natin that is equal to 1 minus sine squared x. Okay? So pwede natin siyang i-substitute doon. So we now have the limit of 4 minus 4 sine x over 3 times 1 minus sine squared x. And then, i-factor natin yung taas at yung baba. We have the limit of, ilabas natin si 4 dito, 1 minus sine x divided by 3 times, ito, difference of two squares. So we have 1 minus sine x, 1 plus sine x, as x approaches pi over 2. So pwede na nating tanggalin to at ito, which leaves us with the limit of 4 over 3 times 1 plus sine x as x approaches pi over 2. Ngayon, pwede na tayong mag-substitute by direct substitution. That is 4 over 3 times 1 plus sine pi over 2, which is equal to 4 over 3 times 1 plus sine 90 is equal to 1. So we have 4 over 3 times 2, or that is equal to 2 over 3. So let's evaluate the limit of sine 2x over sine x as x approaches 0. Again, by direct substitution, this is 0 over 0. But we know that sine 2x is equal to 2 sine x cos x. So we now have the limit of 2 sine x cos x over sine x as x approaches 0. So pwede nating tanggalin to. So we now have the limit of 2 cos x as x approaches 0. And cos 0 is equal to 1. So we have 2 times 1. So the answer now is 2. The limit of sine squared x over 1 minus cos x as x approaches 0. So we know that sine squared x is equal to 1 minus cos squared x. So we now have the limit of 1 minus cos squared x over 1 minus cos x as x approaches 0. Then, pwede nating i-factor to, difference of two squares. So, we have the limit of 1 minus cos x times 1 plus cos x all over 1 minus cos x as x approaches 0. So, pwede nating tanggalin to, which leaves us with the limit of 1 plus cos x as x approaches 0. Then by direct substitution, this is just equal to 1 plus cos 0 is equal to 1. Therefore, the answer is 2. So let's evaluate the limit of sine x over 1 minus cos 2x as x approaches 0. So by direct substitution, that is 0 over 1 minus 1, so we have 0 over 0. Okay, so indeterminate form siya. But we know that cos 2x is equal to cos squared x minus sin squared x. Okay, so balikan niyo yung trigonometric identities nyo. So we can rewrite this now as the limit of sin x over 1 minus cos squared x minus sin squared x as x approaches 0, which is equal to the limit of sin x over 1 minus cos squared x plus sin squared x as x approaches 0. So ano ba tong 1 minus cos squared x? Diba equal lang yan kay sin squared x? So we now have the limit of sin x over sin squared x plus sin squared x as x approaches 0. So by combining like terms, that is the limit of sin x over 2 sin squared x as x approaches 0. So pwede natin i-cancel yan at yung isa dyan. So this becomes now the limit of 1 over 2 sin x as x approaches 0. Okay, observe that kapag nag-direct substitution tayo, this is equal to 1 over 0. Okay? So ang tanong, anong 0 to? Positive o negative? So check natin ngayon yung dalawa. Check natin yung limit ng 1 over 2 sin x as x approaches 0 from the left at yung limit ng 1 over 2 sin x as x approaches 0 from the right. So by direct substitution, this is just equal to 1 over 0 negative or negative infinity. Ito naman, 1 over 0 positive, so that is positive infinity. So since the two one-sided limits are not equal, therefore, the limit of this function as x approaches 0 is DNE, or the limit does not exist.